Like driving the car on the ground with tires, there's going to be kinetic energy that will stop you.
This is why we're not pilots.
Well, this is why I'm sat on the ground in the hall, and that's about it. But yeah, today, if you get a chance to come down and sit in this wonderful aircraft, just spend.
Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund and the RAF Centurion Fund. They've already been conducting some quite major training efforts towards the end of May. They covered the length of Hadrian's Wall. They then went down to the Derwent Dams, famed for being, of course, the training grounds for number 617 Squadron in the run-up to the Ruhr Dams raid of 1943, and returning to the Derbyshire and Lancashire Gliding Club. Later this month, they're going on a 3-day training flight, starting at Skegness, going down to North Norfolk, and covering about 200.
Producer of the RAF's very own podcast, which is called Inside Air, available at all.
Very well known on the circuit. In fact, I think I worked with you back in
display team, so he'll be up here to talk to you about the red hours later. So that's the aircraft arriving at the moment. But getting back to the Falcons and why we're here today, I'd also like to point out that not only do the parachutists play a big role in our display, but we have a ground team as well. And our drop zone safety teams today are currently out on the drop zone, which is located in front of the VIP area, and they are setting up for the final drop for the team today. The DZSO today is Flight Lieutenant Mike Reeve, and he is ably assisted by survival equipment technician. They also have smoke canisters and smoke brackets attached to their legs to allow you to be able to track them through the sky. So watch out for the orange-red smoke, which will give the formation a little bit more of a visual aspect as they proceed down towards the drop zone. So the smoke on the ground has been lit. That's a final indication to the team to make sure that they've got the wind indicator. Now as they descend, please make an absolutely loud as you possible cheer and shout, because the guys, once they're under their canopy, can hear you all the way down to the ground. So let's give them a big Cosford welcome.
280, 10 knots, clear live drop.
So I've just had the clear live drop from the drop zone safety officer, so watch to the skies any second now.
10 knots, 280, 10 knots.
First two are on the ramp. Even
even at this height you can still hear this distinctive waka waka of the Chinook.
You'll see them in a minute.
And look carefully, and very soon you'll see a couple of small dots drop out the back of the aircraft. So they will fly directly over the top of us initially. They will drop slightly beyond the airfield because the wind will blow them back in. Final instructions have now been relayed. Get your cameras ready, ladies and gentlemen, boys.
Yeah, they flew round and round.
Yeah, they were like, this time. No, wait, this time.
So if you're tracking them on the sky, they're over on the right-hand side now. And here they go, the 2022 Royal Air Force Falcon parachute display team. And immediately they pull their parachutes, and you'll see the smoke canisters igniting, which are attached to their boots, and give you the visual clue of their formation on the way down. So for 2022, we do have a new display, and the team have been working on it over the last few months. Straight away, they'll go into what we call the snake formation. So they're forming a large snake in the sky, one behind the other. It's quite a tricky maneuver because the wind's blowing them around. And as we form up, they'll then turn back 180 degrees up the jump path, and once the coach is happy, he'll call for our signature move, the carousel. Now this is one you want to get your cameras on for. This is a new formation for 2022 and visually very effective. Instructions to the parachutists to turn round, and they're now manoeuvring their canopies into the carousel manoeuvre. And the carousel is a very, very difficult manoeuvre for the team to perform. They have to keep really tight on each other and ultimate control, and they'll break away into the same shape. The other two parachutists you can see are our two flag bearers today, and they're flying the Royal Air Force ensign and the Union flag. They will stay clear of the main boat to make sure that they can observe the team down onto the ground and follow down with the flag. As I mentioned earlier, you can see the red, white, and blue, so do be proud of your RAF Falcons. Give them a massive cheer as they come down towards the seated. Back into snake formation, they will now go into what they call the duck position. The duck position allows them to land simultaneously onto the drop zone. It's extremely difficult manoeuvre to do, and it involves a lot of skill and trust in each other to make sure that they fly safely. So they will attempt to do a team landing, one after the other. And as they come in and approach the drop zone, once again, they can hear you, so you give me a cheer. So in order of landing, we'll have Team Coach Flight Sergeant James Brucey, Sergeant Gaz Nicholson, Sergeant Ben Samuel, Sergeant Bobby Manari, Sergeant Doug McCall, Sergeant Paddy Gilwar, Corporal Joe Fink, Sergeant Sean McCabe, and Sergeant Owen Collins. And finally at the back is the Team Boss OC Falcons Flight Lieutenant Stu Philpott.
Known as the Key Publishing Stand. They publish all of your favourite aviation magazines and more on them before too long.
so they can get ready for their formation flypast.
The team will be running through their display checks, so they will be checking what we call scan checks, so they'll be checking the transmission.
What do we need to do in
And there we go, straight into the pedal turn. He's now going to position the aircraft out to the left-hand side, and he's going to position 30 being sat in that right-hand seat. So Flinny is what we call pattering or commentating the angles of bank, the pitch attitudes, and everything that Schmitty needs as he's looking out of the aircraft at low level, making sure his eyes stay out of the aircraft the entire time. And as they come around the top of that manoeuvre, Flinny is now switching his attention from the instruments and talking about the angles of that pull up today based on wind. A little bit of wind, but not very much today. So broadly speaking, the distances won't have changed too much today for that pull up. Out of the aircraft, trying to see the apparent ground speed, that's the speed that he's travelling over the ground, drop to 0, and as it's almost at that point, he's pitching the nose forward to make sure that's coming down again, gathering forward airspeed. Flinny is pattering or talking about his nose up, which they don't want to go past 50 degrees. They're aiming to get 50 degrees exactly on the instrument before they then pitch down at the same angle. Out to the right-hand side now, we're going to see another offset wing over, so setting 30 degrees to the left before they come round. This one a little easier, because Schmitty's got good view out to the side. And as they come back in, we're going to see a single nose over, and what we're going to try and do is get you onto the display frequency to hear Flinny providing this commentary to Schmitty. Give them a wave now as they come past. This is Wing Waggle to say hello to all of you at Cosford here this afternoon. See the ramps going down now, and that's the preparation for the crewmen to have their big moment in this display. They're moving around in the cabin at different parts of this display. So the technique we use to bring the aircraft to a very, very fast stop if we see troops late on the battlefield because they've been under cover or we've been running in at very low level. This quick stop incredibly difficult to fly, but Schmidt is very well practiced at doing so. And there we go, presenting both discs to the airflow, bringing the aircraft to a stop. And we're now going to go into what we call the sideways trawl, so everyone make sure you're waving back there at the crewmen on the ramp. So we have 2 crew on board this aircraft today because we needed to carry 2 in order to drop the RAF Falcons, whereas normally we would just have 1 for the display. We've got Sergeant Scotty Morris. Scotty joined the RAF in 2009 as a logistics supplier. He was deployed to Afghanistan before becoming aircrew, and he joined all of us on 27th Squadron in 2018. He spent 4 years on the squadron now, and he has already deployed to Mali on board the French operation out there, and to the Middle East. Sergeant Dan Hine also on the aircraft today, and I believe that's Dan waving to you at the moment. Originally from South Africa, Dan joined the RAF in 2015. He trained as a weapon system operator. Dan displaying here today, big moment there, and also Dan's wife, Navi. Now as they get to the end of the display line there, Dan's got to very quickly get that ramp up, which you'll see happening. There we go. He's now dashing back into the cabin, stowing those display hands and making sure he's in the correct position for them to start the Gorney corkscrew. This manoeuvre was developed very specifically in Bosnia to allow the aircraft to depart from a landing site. It was a factory in a valley. And there we go, and you can see them turning 360 degrees as they go. The idea there being that the three weapon systems we have on board the aircraft are rotating constantly, so that if the aircraft was engaged anywhere in that valley, then one of those weapons was going to be able to deal with the threat straight away. And as they get to the top there, Schmitty getting the nose down, left-hand turn, 405 degrees of turn to do here in descent before they run in parallel to the crowd for another wing over prior to the next manoeuvre. Nose stays down, airspeed builds as he goes. Schmitty now looking left across the cockpit, across Flinny, who's been helping him all the way to find that display data and that display line again. And then crucially making sure they have 120 knots straight and level for the next manoeuvre. Now one of the things we can't demonstrate here for you today on this particular display is some of the other capability we have. So underslung loads are a key part of this aircraft's capability, and the three hooks you may have seen on the underside of the aircraft, one of them will be stowed for the display though, are very crucial in that role. Helping us deploy that around the world are the team from the Joint Helicopter Support Squadron, JHSS, who are here today and have a stand on the display ground also. Very skilled team who help us and travel with us throughout the world to help us conduct operations of that nature. And this is a good moment for your cameras, especially for those of you towards the display data. So this aircraft's now going to come in for a running landing from the right-hand side. This is a manoeuvre we use if we have had an issue with the aircraft. So if it's power limited, we want to use as little power as possible to land the aircraft. We won't come to the hover. We'll run the aircraft straight onto the ground like this. And again, this is a key moment where both the crewman and the co-pilot are assisting in getting the aircraft configured for this. Back wheels touch down, Schmitty brings the cyclic, that's the control between his legs, back towards him to make sure that the front of the aircraft stays in the air, and then reduces power to make sure that the back of the aircraft effectively acts heavier than the front to get that aircraft slowing onto the runway. And as he comes to 0 knots there, you're going to see him do something that we don't practice regularly and is very much part of the display sequence, and that is take this manoeuvre backwards. Now this is not easy to do because of course he is staring forwards, and he's going to come backwards to the point that he then lifts up prior to 25 knots, and he's going to come back into the hover facing all of you to say one big goodbye from the Chinook display for 2022 at Cosford. So as he comes into the hover there, I would please ask all of you to wave and let the crew know that you very much appreciated this, if indeed you did. Come up into the hover here. I would like to make mention of our incredible engineering team led by Flight Lieutenant Sam Taylor here today, who are absolutely crucial in getting this aircraft into the air and up here in the first place. Without them, the Chinook display would not happen at all. So give them one big wave. They're going to then go for an over-shoulder departure, which is a departure profile we use when departing a landing site with the threat in the 12 o'clock or directly in front of us. And they're going to disappear away. So to all of you, thank you very much for watching the Chinook display this afternoon. I very much hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much to the show organisers, all of our sponsors, and of course the University of Birmingham Air Squadron, who are working so very hard to make sure all of the aircrew, engineers, everyone is in the right place to give you this performance today. Thank you very much all.
University Air Squadron background across the RAF writ large. But those that don't necessarily go on to join, we still want them to gain as much as they can from their time on the squadron, and also then take that off into whatever it is they do next. Whether that's industry or politics or medicine, whatever they go into, that they've got that positive experience of defence, but also the skills that they learn with us.
Now, here at the Airshow today, tell me about the role of the students.
So the students are here very much.
Number 2 in the formation, Flight Lieutenant Mark Everson, another of the UBAS instructors. He flew both fixed and rotary wing aircraft during his RAF service, left the service to fly commercially, but rejoined as one of the instructors on the Air Experience flight element of the squadron in 2014. And with Mark in that second tutor, Officer Cadet Lucy Pepper, a philosophy student at the University of Birmingham. Completing the formation, Flight Lieutenant Jonathan Flewers, who flew a very diverse range of aeroplanes during his service, the Chinook with number 7 Squadron, then the VC-10. He first entered the UAS world as a student himself with Bristol University Air Squadron. Later he became a qualified flying instructor with the University of London Air Squadron. He was in the Royal New Zealand Air Force for 5 years before he came back to the UK and joined the Air Experience flight element of UBAS. And accompanying Jonathan in the third tutor is Officer Cadet Quinn Partridge, an aeronautical engineering student at Staffordshire University.
So the University of Birmingham Air Squadron was formed back on the 3rd of May 1941. Didn't actually start flying training until post-war, October 1946, and that was firstly at Royal Air Force Castle Bromwich. And that was on the Tiger Moth aircraft, one of which of course we have on static display. You can actually fly in one of these aircraft.
And meanwhile, if you're a current or future student at one of the unis I mentioned, and you think you'd like to have a go at this to gain some flying experience, possibly, but not compulsorily, with a view to maybe joining the RAF in future, or just building up other skills, then go and see UBAS. They'd be delighted to talk to you about what they do on the unit and about how you too can sign up. And who knows, it may be one of you sitting in one of these tutors at next year's Cosford Airshow.
And to display at 2 o'clock. Our current understanding is at 2 o'clock we will enjoy 2 fighters, but no Lancaster bomber. However, they are trying to fix the aircraft. If they can get it fixed this afternoon, rest assured we'll do our very best to get it across the country to Cosford to maybe display a little bit later on.
To sign up. It started out what's now the RAF Strawberry Gliding Club as the Wheaton Gliding Club at RAF Cosford. As well, as I say, as being employed as the glider tug over at Shawbury. So look up and overhead, coming off the tow, Ian Gallagher with the Schleicher Act 21.
I'm sure they'll be very pleased. There go the Junos that Andy and Ben were talking about, returning to Red Arrows 4. And there are various rendezvous points around the showground as well. If you do have the misfortune of losing track of a loved one, those rendezvous points, those meeting points are in the RAF zone next to car park 4 and the first thing.
Very courageous and skilled German U-boat captains. And the problem was you couldn't cover all the way across the Atlantic. Aircraft could operate one side of the Atlantic or the other, but there was a gap in the middle. And amongst others, this was one of those aircraft that filled that gap. The U-boat had been spotted, its position would be radioed back, and then generally the aircraft would try and attack that U-boat. The U-boat captain had a choice, could either dive and try and evade. More often than not, they would stay on the surface and fight. The U-boat was certainly very well gunned, and there were some fierce fights. This is not a fast aircraft. And no, in fact, 2 VCs were awarded to captains of Catalinas for courageous attacks.
On that demonstrated on this pass from left to right. Of their being retractable, helping further reduce the drag of the aircraft. And then came, as I mentioned, the further improvement into the amphibian configuration with the PBY-5A model. And the colour scheme on this particular, the name the Canadians gave to their license-produced Catalinas, recalls another facet of this aircraft's operational service, both during and after World War II, which was in the air-sea rescue role. When air-sea rescue services began to develop, It was, of course, a purely military affair, the objective being to rescue downed aircrew from, for example, the English Channel. And so it was that the RAF began employing aircraft like, in particular, the Supermarine Walrus in that role, assisted by the likes of Westland Lysanders and even Spitfires and other frontline types, dropping rescue equipment to downed aircrew. Very late in World War II, the US Army Air Forces finally managed to get their hands on a few Catalinas, production up to that point having been largely reserved, as far as the American forces were concerned, for the US Navy and Marine Corps. Particular OA-10A Catalina. And those early air sea rescue efforts, rescuing down military aircrew during wartime, the forerunners to the much broader air sea rescue, as it used to be known now search and rescue service, of which we commemorate 70 years in RAF service. Display item, I believe.
He converts his speed into height to perform his first manoeuvre, quarter clover. David John is known to most as DJ or Gibbo. He was born in Southport and started his career in the Royal Navy in 1996, where he trained to fly the Sea King in the support helicopter role. DJ dives down before he redeems his airspeed to achieve 1,300 feet to the top of a quarter clover. Operationally, DJ has flown the Sea King in a variety of areas, including Sierra Leone and the Persian Gulf. He's also spent 3 years flying search and rescue missions off the Cornish coast. DJ now rolls 90 degrees whilst pointing straight up before completing a stall turn at almost zero airspeed. DJ is now serving in the Royal Air Force, and when not displaying, he's responsible for training qualified military pilots to become instructors on the Grub Tutor. During his varied career, DJ has amassed over 6,000 flying hours on 50 different aircraft types. In his spare time, DJ flies vintage aeroplanes, races powerboats, and drives classic cars. He has also a penchant for Michelin-starred restaurants. Today, the Tutor is flown by the Royal Air Force's largest flying school, number 6 Flying Training School. The Tutor is used to tune joint junior RAF pilots, University Air Squadron students and air cadets being flown on air experience flights around the UK. Displaying the Tutor requires the pilot to be meticulous with his energy management. DJ now uses a wing over to regain as much energy as possible for his next manoeuvre. The Grub 115E Tutor is operated in partnership with Babcock International Group. It is constructed of a carbon composite material and has a 180 horsepower Lycoming piston engine. The Tutor has a top speed of 212 miles an hour and can achieve a maximum 6 Gs, meaning the DJ is subjected 6 times stronger than gravity. DJ now pulls up into the vertical for another stall turn. Alongside Babcock, the Tutor team is also supported by the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund. The fund is there to...
So, from the left, from the Armée de l'Air et de l'Espace, the French Air and Space Force, this is the very exciting Dassault Rafale C. And there it is, accelerating in towards us. The second time we've seen the French Air Force Rafale in the Cosford flying display, the previous occasion as part of our RAF 100 air show in 2018. So, great to have it back. As I say, running in from the left. This is the French Air and Space Forces Rafale conversion unit. Into a loop with rolls at the apex on what we call the B axis. The A axis is the one running parallel to the main runway here at Cosford. The B axis at 90 degrees to that, back in towards us. In onto the main A-axis, we were shortly to see once again this aircraft's outstanding agility demonstrated. This is a maneuver known as the square dance. The aircraft describing a square in the sky. Aspects of all of the Armée de l'Air Rafale displays over the years, but regular changes of pace during this sequence, this combination of aggression and grace. In towards us into a negative G outside turn, showing you the aircraft's upper surfaces. Showing you all the angles of this single-seat Rafale C model. The French Air and Space Force also operates the two-seat Rafale B. The first deliveries to the French Air Force Experimental Test Unit were in 2004, along with many others in the years that have followed. Putting the gear down there, but now cleaning the aircraft up. Over Libya in 2011 during what the French used Operation Armatin. They became the first coalition fighter aircraft to operate over the cities of Tripoli and Benghazi. Now, down the line. Another combat zone where Rafales have seen a lot of service in recent years has been in Mali, assisting the government against jihadist forces in Operation Serval, with some very long-range sorties by this aircraft. One of them the longest in French Air Force history, with 4 Rafales hitting 21 targets in a mission from their base at Saint-Dizier in France to N'Djamena in Chad that lasted 9 hours, 35 minutes. Now an inverted to inverted pass. Rafales have flown on operations in the Central African Republic and against the so-called Islamic State in Iraq as part of Operation Shamal alongside the Rafale M's of the French Naval Air Arm. It is an incredibly versatile platform, performing close air support support, air interdiction, and ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions in these theatres. The upgrade to Rafale F3 standard brought the nuclear strike capability into this aircraft's arsenal. Further new weaponry is being added in the latest set of upgrades to F3R standard, which became fully operational in March 2021. And next up is the F4 standard Rafale, which will bring about greater connectivity with other airborne platforms, the new Mika-NG air-to-air missile, the AASM Hammer precision-guided munition. Now a slow pass from left to right. Aircraft. He was an instructor on the Socata Epsilon primary trainer, during which time he was on the French Air Force Cartouche Doré aerobatic team. Now a fast pass with a very good photo opportunity, showing you the Bubu became part of the Rafale force in 2012 with the famous Régiment de Chasse 230 Normandie-Niemen. And he's been on his current unit, the Escadron de Transformation Rafale 3-4, since last year. And the cloud base today permitting the full high show, so we get to see the square loop here. Us on the B-axis once more. With double rolls into a derry turn, rolling one direction, turning the other. Completes a really all-action display from Capitaine Bertrand Butin of the Armée de l'Air et de l'Espace on the Dassault Rafale C. Absolutely fantastic. Getting airborne. Look closely, straight into a knife edge. Holding the aircraft very low. Now that's a takeoff. Combination of a very aerobatic aircraft in the hands of a very experienced aerobatic pilot. Let's enjoy Rich Goodwin in the pit special.
dates back to the 1940s. For many decades it was the top performing aerobatic aircraft, won competitions around the world. Still, as you can see, a very sprightly performer, especially in the right hands. And my word, Rich Goodwin is definitely the right hands. Ex-RAF fast jet pilot, flew the Tornado mainly, including missions in the Gulf War. Operation Desert Storm, 21 missions. Left the Air Force in 1993 and loves aerobatic flying. He does, and he has obviously put his pit special through his two pit special, because we've got his other one here in the static display, through a very extensive modification program. 8.5 litre Lycoming engine, 540 horsepower, and as you can see, he can hover like we used to say a Harrier, an F-35 we must say now, in a propeller aircraft. Absolutely amazing. Very highly modified, as I say. He removed the standard landing gear, modified engine mount to enable the installation of titanium sprung undercarriage legs. The cowling is totally redesigned. The rudder is very, very different from what you'd see on an ordinary pit. And perhaps most noticeably, these blade-like wings. It gives this aircraft a performance like no other. It sounds absolutely fantastic as well. And this aircraft, he's registered JPIT, J-P-I-T, and the J stands for jet because in the future this is going to become his jet pits with the addition of a pair of small Lynx jet turbine engines. Now that really does take nearly hanging on the propeller as it falls back down through its own smoke. A very, very long way down through its own smoke. Just thinking ahead to when the jet version of this comes out, total power available is going to be around about 1,700 pounds, but the aircraft only weighs about 1,500, so that tower of power, it will just... As it comes past once again on the knife edge, showing you the Sabio logos on the upper surfaces, Rich Goodwin. Buffalo Bridge Memorial Flight Display for 2022. Here you can see the fighter pair. We have MK356 and Spitfire P7350 on a topside crowd right arrival. Our pilots today are Flight Lieutenant Andy Priest in P7 and Squadron Leader Mark Lung in MK356. And then we'll see that perfectly line abreast formation of the two Spitfires. Now, as well as the displays you're about to watch today, the BBMF conducts flypast events all over the country, from village fetes to state occasions, just short of 1,000 events each year. And this year we were exceptionally proud to participate in the flypast over Buckingham Palace to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, seen by millions across the world. I've just had the call saying fighters break, break, go, and now we can see both the Spitfires flanking off. We have the first of the Spitfire displays, which will be Squadron Leader Mark Lung in MK356 as we see Flight Lieutenant Andy Priest just departing the display line. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look to your right hand side, please give a big cheer for Squadron Leader Mark Lung. Craft types and several different marks.
announce the changeover into Flight Lieutenant Andy Priest in P7350 for the start of his display. Now this display has been derived for this year for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, and it's very unique, so we're working it around the crowd datum. So that means that Andy's going to try and keep as tight in for this display as he can, so he's going to spend as little time as he can on the left and the right hand side of the display line, and he's going to try and keep everything in the centre and down to 100 feet for yourselves today.
Right, bite your tongue and do that with your mate. Now, bite your tongue. Yeah, and then do... See the Spitfire pulling up into the manoeuvre that we call the half horizontal into a descending left-hand turn. So Andy is now going to be looking at the left, finding yourselves on the crowd line and bringing the Spitfire around into the 360 pass. See Andy coming out of that 360. What we're going to see now is a manoeuvre dedicated to the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Called Platinum, this is two wingovers joined together to make what we call a figure of 8 in the sky. So there's the first half of the manoeuvre complete, and he's now descending, looking for datum as he pull hard right and into the next wingover. I'm sure you'll agree, ladies and gentlemen, that the blue skies and the clouds behind us are the perfect backdrop for the elliptical wings of this beautiful Mark II Spitfire. And as we see Andy descending now, he's going to be pulling left into the next manoeuvre, which is going to be a 3/4 victory roll. Is used back in the war to try and trick the enemy into the direction of travel of the Spitfire. So as you can see there, he pulled up, jinked left, and then he pulls back through on himself to come back right. Now as we're seeing descending now back down to the crowd line, he's going to go into the oblique 360. So from the crowd centre, it looks like a horseshoe as he climbs up off crowd centre. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see Squadron Leader Markling in MK356 entering the display line. World War II aircraft are preserved in flying condition as a living tribute to those who serve their country. And this year marks the 65th anniversary of the formation of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight.
display from Squadron Leader Mark Lung will be subtly different to what you've just seen from Flight Lieutenant Andy Priest. So he's doing a display derived from the Hurricane, which you'll have seen. Now, whilst many of you know, the flight actually has 12 aircraft with 5 different types, but it only has 2 full-time pilots and over 40 engineers, as well as 4 civil. Entering the display line for a formation arrival of Typhoon and Spitfire. Spitfire leads the Typhoon, and then the Typhoon will go into its display from there. Now, the flight has been based at RAF Coningsby since 1976, and Coningsby is home to the Typhoon and has 3 frontline Typhoon squadrons, as well as 29 Squadron, the Operational Conversion Unit, and 41 Squadron. And as many of you will know, that the Typhoon flying today is from 29 Operational Conversion Unit Squadron. As I said before, so we're over in the RAF village. There is a virtual reality headset, so we're behind the crew. It's full 360, and you can actually fly the approach to East Midlands Airport, and you'll see what the crews go through and get ready for a massive cheer as we welcome the Typhoon and Spitfire display for Cosford 2022. Agree, that is one incredible sight. Now, what we can see there is the Spitfire keeping the power on. He's calling Flight Lieutenant Paddy O'Hare, telling him which way he's going to direct the next turn, and you can see Paddy in a very high alpha manoeuvre. So the Typhoon is actually flying extremely slow for the aircraft, so Paddy has to be very gentle on the controls, making sure he keeps in perfect line of stern in the formation today. And as they come towards the crown line now, they're going to be turning left, so you're going to get a perfect shot now of the elliptical wing of the Spitfire and that incredible Union Jack underneath the Typhoon.
Now here's the Typhoon.
Doesn't happen just overnight, and the formations that you see today are all dedicated, hard-working pilots that have spent years and years training. Flight Lieutenant Andy Priest being one of them in the Spitfire we see today. You may have noticed him from the Tutor display beforehand, and he's flown a multitude of aircraft from Domini, Harrier to Tornado, so he has a perfect set of skills to display in front of yourselves with the Typhoon today. Ladies and gentlemen, as they get ready for their final few passes, I'd just like to say a few things. The Battle of Brick Memorial's flight motto is "Lest we forget," and we hope that you remember our mission to commemorate those 120,000 personnel who have given their lives in the service of the Royal Air Force. As that symphony of engines subsides slightly, the hairs in the back of my neck are still standing up. I'm not sure if there is a more evocative or stirring sound. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure. Our flight's motto is "Lest we forget." And we hope that you will see us throughout the display season for 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for the Typhoon and Spitfire break. And please give a big cheer for the Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight Fair 2022.
Well, we've enjoyed two Spitfires, we've enjoyed Spitfire and Typhoon. Now get ready for solo Typhoon display. We enjoy this display from the Typhoon. Nice sunny afternoon at Cosford. Please bear in mind that Typhoons are on standby. That's Royal Air Force Coningsby and Royal Air Force Lucas. Cruder, sorry, not Lucas, of course. Now Lossiemouth, Cruder, ready to go. We call it Quick Reaction Alert. Coningsby is to be found numbers 3, 11, 12, which is the joint UK and Qatari Typhoon training unit, 29, the operational conversion unit, which provides this aircraft, and 41, the operational test and evaluation unit, squadrons. At Lossiemouth, numbers 1, 2, 6 and 9 squadrons. Flight stationed at Mount Pleasant in the Falkland Islands. Eurofighter Typhoon operators. It was really the RAF, wasn't it, Andy, that was at the forefront of developing and then bringing into active service this type's full range of multi-role capabilities. Indeed, and it's a capability that continues to improve. Been in service for quite a long time now. Yes. Think of this as a new aircraft that has been in service for a good number of years. Capabilities keep being added. This is going to be a frontline aircraft. One of the latest priorities, of course, was getting the Typhoon ready to fully replace the GR4 in the full spectrum of air-to-ground roles. When that type left service in 2019, and Project Centurion, developed by BAE Systems, was the answer to that. Mainly covered the carriage of the Brimstone missile, yes, and also Storm Shadow. The Brimstone, very often the missile of choice, a very small weapon, very precise, does the job extremely well. Storm Shadow, a large standoff cruise missile. Yeah. They upgraded the aircraft software from one standard to another literally overnight. night, while Typhoons were on deployment to Cyprus for Operation Shader, the UK contribution to the fight against the so-called Daesh, or so-called Islamic State, in Iraq and Syria. Typhoon in RAF service, but this type as a whole, the Typhoon's first air-to-air victory, which was an aircraft on Operation Shader that shot down a small hostile drone over Syria. That is, of course, very much the nature of modern warfare. High-speed pass now, to pitch up for a half horizontal. Cuban manoeuvres, which will bring Flight Lieutenant Adam O'Hare down once again for a final fast pass, accelerating to around 500 knots, afterburner engaged on the two Eurojet EJ200 engines. Typhoon, FGR-4. Enhanced vigilance activity, this being a NATO operation in response to the unfolding conflict in Ukraine, with further Typhoon FGR-4s operating from the iconic aircraft, the iconic unit. So I expect if you stuck on a little island somewhere bouncing about, what colour the aircraft was wearing that came to rescue you. So this was sort of almost a late replacement in the programme, seeking static. I'm really delighted to see it. Yes, the Westland Wessex HU-5 from Historic Helicopters at Chard in the Somerset. We were hearing from the fleet's founder, Andrew Whitehouse, earlier on, this remarkable collection of British rotorcraft representing all three services. And this, currently the only flying Wessex in civilian hands in the world. This ex-Royal Navy rescue platform. But also, Andy, it reflects the involvement of the Wessex in Royal Navy service 40 years ago in the Falklands, doesn't it? Royal Marines Commando support role, served in the Falklands, deploying special forces, members of the SAS and the SBS, the Special Boat Service, moving men and material around the South Atlantic Theatre. But it did indeed come at a cost. 9 Wessex were lost there, 6 of them in the sinking of the Atlantic conveyor that we were talking about at the start of the programme in relation to the Chinook. And the incredible feat of airmanship during the retaking of South Georgia. Loss of 2 Wessex there in atrocious weather conditions.
It's worth researching online or reading some of the books on the subject. It's an incredible story. Wessex trying to extract special forces in Storm Force 12 weather. I can remember reports of the Wessex just being moved sideways, sliding down the glacier before rolling over. But one Wessex did manage to come to the rescue. Everyone was extracted safely.
And that Wessex still survives to this day. It's an old Mark III that has been converted for the commando support role, and it's exhibited in the Fleet Air Arm Museum at Yeovilton, nicknamed Humphrey, and it still bears the scars of those operations in the South Atlantic. This was a license-produced development of the Sikorsky S-58, an American design, because Westland were in close cahoots with Sikorsky at the time, you might say. They already developed the S-55 as the Whirlwind, used prior to the Wessex as the RAF's main air-sea rescue helicopter. The F-58 was shipped to the UK. It was re-engined with a British power plant, a single Napier Gazelle, and it first took to the air in May 1957. The following June in 1958, the first Westland-built Wessex took to the air.
And of course, in addition to supporting our search and rescue theme, there's also a big royal link here as well. Of course. So the late Prince Philip and Prince Charles were trained as Wessex pilots, and of course this aircraft, this type, did serve on the Queen's flight, as it was called then, not 32, the Royal Squadron, that's a later incarnation. They were modified. I think the interior was a little bit more plush.
It was ordered first by the Royal Navy. It really did give the Royal Navy a great deal of what it needed for that role for many, many years. The RAF took it on as well as the Wessex HC2 with twin coupled Rolls-Royce gnome engines, and that's the configuration we see on this one.
And in fact, that's one of the main design considerations for the sort of chunkiness of the aircraft, is the position of the engines. The aircraft kind of has a mouth, at the nose, and that actually opens up, and that's the front end of the engines. The engines are actually angled upwards at 45 degrees. The pilots or the aircrew basically sit astride them, and then the crankshaft and the gearbox is behind and above. It's amazing to think the engines are basically positioned at an angle of 45 degrees in this aircraft. Remarkable.
And the pilot, when you see it on the ground, you really get an appreciation of how high the pilot is, really up in the heavens in the Wessex. The RAF put the Wessex into service in 1964, and they operated worldwide, supporting UK and Allied forces. They served for many years in Northern Ireland, and of course, Wessex were the last British military aircraft to serve in Hong Kong, with number 28 Squadron, up until the territory was handed back to Chinese control in 1997. Doesn't it look absolutely beautiful? It really is a stunner, this aircraft, which dates from 1966. It served with the Royal Navy Commando Helicopter Force, the so-called Jubilee Force, out in the Far East. It was transferred to the search and rescue role with 771 Naval Air Squadron at Culdrose in Cornwall, but it then went back to commando tasks with 845 Squadron in the Falklands. It was flown out there in a short Belfast transport of heavy cargo airlines in May 1982, so 40 years ago last month, and it returned aboard the Royal Fleet for many years. It was much later acquired by Andrew Whitehouse for his historic helicopters collection. It flew again in February 2019, and you might well have seen it feature in a TV series, the name of which I temporarily forget, about different aircraft restorations. 10,000 hours was spent on the restoration of this machine, and it's part of the 4-strong historic helicopters deployment to Cosford for today's show, which is unprecedented, landing on over on the far side, and it was one of the true legends of the Airshow circuit flying it for us. John.
German pilot got smoked in 1990.
aircraft that didn't just go on to be powered by an engine of British design, but which also stemmed from a British requirement for new fighter aeroplanes. Purchasing Commission, established in New York during the early part of World War II, was on the lookout for fighter designs to potentially equip the RAF at a time when British manufacturers were hard pressed. The Curtiss P-40 Hawk family seemed like a good option, but on visiting North American Aviation, which was already producing Harvard trainers for the RAF, North American, which had never built a production fighter before, thought it could come up with something superior. The design called the NA-73 was the result.
Indeed, in a recent edition of Flypast magazine, they listed what they considered to be the top 15 Allied fighters of the Second World War. In at 3, the Hurricane. In at 2, the Spitfire. Top of the pile, this aircraft, the P-51D Mustang.
One of the things the Mustang really managed to do was to marry two very important aspects, one being an amazing fighter aircraft, but coupling that with range. Quite a rare thing to do. To go a long way, you tend to need perhaps 2 engines, heavier aircraft, bigger fuel tanks, which generally didn't make the aircraft as manoeuvrable or as effective as a fighter. Spitfire, rightly recognised as one of the finest dogfighters of all time, that had very short legs. Originally designed as a point interceptor, so it wasn't particularly suited to escorting bombers into Europe, into Germany, which is of course where this aircraft exceeded. The early P-51 Marks were powered by the Allison V1710 engine. Those aircraft have tended to be rather unfairly dismissed over the years because they didn't have the sort of high altitude fighter capability and the long range fighter capability that the later Merlin engined examples had. In fact, the Allison engine Mustangs were outstanding combat aircraft. Immediately, its outright performance was transferred. This aircraft at Cosford several times over the years. When it was Old Crow, that used to be the name it carried with the Scandinavian historic.
One of our overseas items. Indeed, there is a Falklands link here. Ah, yeah. Argentinians did operate a 109 in the Falklands. In fact, one was shot down.
Yes, and they found their way to Britain, some of the ex-Argentine A109s, didn't they?
I think the word is captured.
Yes, this is the Augusta A109 BAI of the Belgian Air Component. And this is known as the Razzle Blades display for 2022. That's the title they've given the colour scheme for this machine, which comes to us from 17 Squadron, part of one wing of the Belgian Air Component, based at Beauvechain.
Everything in that cockpit is looking very green.
Coming towards the end of this sequence now. Bringing the A109 back in towards us. And there should be ample time before now and the A109 landing on to once again admire the new colour scheme for this display example. 109E Tower and the Stretched Power Elite. And there are also other dedicated military versions, the LUH, the Light Utility Helicopter, which was purchased by the likes of Sweden, South Africa and Australia. It's always been a very attractive, elegant design, as you'd expect from the Italians.
Is that correct? Hold. Wessex, remain on the ground and hold.
So that completes the display by Commandant Aviator Jo Jacobs, the pilot, and the co-pilot, Commandant Aviator Stijn Solmans, of 17th Squadron of the Belgian Air Component with the Augusta A109 BAI.
Well, now we're only a few minutes away from the display by the Royal Air Force Aerobatic team, the Red Arrows.
Jubilee celebrations, putting red, white and blue across Buckingham Palace. The team must have been delighted.
Yes, and it's a personal highlight for me because I was actually in the display as well, filling in on the 8 slot, something I've never done. Obviously the Red Arrows have flown over London many times, but this particular year for Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee was just phenomenal. To see all the aircraft ahead of us, the 70 created by the Typhoons was amazing, and then you saw it on the TV yourself when the red, white and blue came out, the crowd just lifted, and yeah, it was a great feeling. Well, let's hope Cosford can match that for favourites. It's great to be back at an RAF station at an RAF air show, and hopefully we'll put on a great display for everybody.
We can't wait. Look forward to it.
Cheers, thank you very much. Team getting airborne. There's many people in the audience going, I remember this.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about this display too, is we're hearing from the two pilots earlier on when Jonathan interviewed them, that there are, wherever de Havilland Canada Chipmunks, like these two aircraft go, people will recall flying in them or flying them. And there aren't too many aeroplanes around these days that have that. The Hawker Siddeley Kestrel, predecessor of the Harrier, membership of the 111 Squadron Black Arrows Hunter team, they were an amazing bunch.
And Ben, I think I'm right in saying, but I'm sure you'll correct me, that this is one of the few aircraft types that has served with the Royal Air Force, the Army Air Corps and the Fleet Aero. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, now back from them in the afternoon. Obviously position with the man. It's absolutely fantastic to be here for this show. Once again, seeing a maximum crowd and performing back to our level of 65 displays this year. Please put your hands together for the 2022 Royal Air Force Aerobatic team, the Red Arrows! Red One pulls up now at 4G, approximately 350 miles an hour, decides to go for a full show. The team collapsed into a formation known as 7 Arrows. Finished approximately 5,500 feet, slowing down to 150 miles per hour as they come over the top. Red One brings the formation to the right. Red One this year is suddenly a top bowl. He is in the second year as the leader of the Red Arrows, having previously been synchro leader in 2017. He's also qualified flying instructor on the Tucano, was a Tucano display pilot, and is also a qualified Typhoon pilot. The smoke comes on, and you see red 1, 2, 3 and 4 move backwards along the formation to form our first big wing spacey shape.
Red One brings the formation round to the right. Get your cameras ready for the shuttle roll. With 9 Squadron at Marham and 11 and 12 Squadron Typhoons at RAF Coningsby. Smoke comes on Reds 4 and 5 and Reds 2, 3, 4 and 5 move up the formation. The Red Arrows are based at RAF Scampton, just to the north of Lincolnshire, which was the base for the 617, now fly the 5th generation F-35. This is Lightning.
What was that? Doesn't make it the shape of the plane?
Once again reaching over 5,500 feet, slowing down to 150 miles an hour as Red One brings the formation back down towards the ground. As it bends the formation to the left, on the right hand side, extreme far right, is Squadron Leader John Bond. Bondi is in his 5th year on the team, having previously been Synchro Leader. He was also Tucano display pilot in 2012, as well as a qualified flying assistant. Once again, the move is called by Red, and Red 4 and 5 smoke as Red 2, 3, 4 and 5 move up alongside, just behind Red 1. Red 6 and 7 split with Red 6 behind Red 2 on the right and Red 7 behind Red 3 on the left. All this while Red 1 is suspended formation, approximately 3 feet in the turn, making this move even more difficult.
Red arrows. I know how to take this off.
Cameras ready for the Phoenix roll. As the formation rolls to the left, you see the iconic shape of the Hawk aircraft. The Hawk has been in service with the Royal Air Force since 1976 and became the aircraft of the Red Arrows in 1979. Since flown to 100 Squadron and the Royal Navy stopped using the Hawks, the Royal Air Force Aerobatic team are the sole user of the Hawk 1 in the UK. Again, Reds 4 and 5 smoke comes on as they move back all the way to the extreme far rear of the formation. The Royal Air Force is constantly trying to adapt its capability and innovation. And on the 1st of April 2020, UK Space Command was formed. The Royal Air Force acknowledges the importance of space in all military operations of land, air, sea and cyber domains. In a tribute to the importance of space and those early space missions with a shape that represents the lunar landing craft, this is Apollo. Formation now starts to move away from the displayer and starts to come to the right.
pause for the formation change again. Reds 6 and 7 move up on the front section, and Reds 4 and 5 get in trail on the front section. This is one of the favourite of the team and of the crowd, and one of the most technically difficult to fly. Cosford, get your cameras ready for the colourful Tornado. Reds 4 and 5 roll around the formation. Watch the colour change as Red 1 brings the formation around to the right. Red 5 smoking red and Red 4 smoking blue. Red 5 is Flight Lieutenant Dave Simmons, known as Simo. He has flown Tornado previously, as well as Marine, ADMB and F5 while they were on exchange. Dave Simmons is a previous student of the University of Birmingham Air Squadron and would like to give a huge shout out to UBAS today. Zero, 10 knots, red hot. 2022 is an important year to the UK and the Commonwealth as we celebrate Her Majesty's 70 years on the throne. I'm sure you saw the team over London last weekend. And in tribute to Her Majesty the Queen and to celebrate her Platinum Jubilee, Cosford, get your cameras ready for the colourful Jubilee Present. As we come to the end of the first half, you will see some formation flying using 7 aircraft. Formation flying is a specific skill, an important skill for all military pilots, but I think you'll believe and appreciate that the Red Arrows take it to the next level with some precision formation changes and some superb aerobatics. As we go into the second half, the formation will split into 2. You've got Reds 1 to 5, they are known as Enid, named after Enid Blyton's famous 5 from the children's series books. You've got Reds 6 and 7 making the synchro pair, led by Red 6, the synchro lead. And it's their job to perform the high-speed, fast opposition passes, demonstrating the agility of the Hawk and the skill of the pilots. Look directly to your front now, you'll see the nose lights of the formation with Enid on top and synchro just below. Get your cameras ready for detonator.
Oh, great! Is that yes? Right, and there's no, it's white, and then there's 2
Turning the radio transmission signals for the synchro lead right. Over the radio transmissions of Enid. Red 7 braking to the left and Red 6 braking to your right, pulling up to approximately 1,500 feet before they come back round to the display area down to 100 feet and a closing speed of over 700 miles an hour. As they point towards each other, they will complete a series of double rolls with a cross in the middle, followed by more barrel rolls in the double rolls. Red 6 smoking red is squad leader Gregor Oxton. He's in his 4th year on the team, having previously flown Typhoon and Harrier on the front line, as well as being a qualified flying instructor smoke comes on as they leave a snake-like smoke trail in the sky in Python. As Enid leave the display, keep an eye left and right for the synchro pair coming back at 100 feet, and that closes speed of over 700 miles an hour. As the synchro pair head towards each other, there'll be a series of crosses before they pull up into a half horizontal in the boomerang. As red 6 and 7 now pull up under 5G at 400 miles an hour, that means everything about them is now weighing 5 times heavier than what you and I are on the ground. Once inverted, they'll be about 60 degrees nose down, heading back down towards the ground for that 100 feet. You see the light of Enid coming in. Reds 2 and 3 smoke red, and before a series of barrel rolls around Reds 4 and 5, before Reds 4 and 5 smoke blue and do the same in one of the hardest manoeuvres for our new pilots every year. This is rollbacks. Behind the exhaust and makes the smoke a lot more full. Keep looking to your right hand side, and once again you've got the synchro pair running in. Red 7 rolling around the smoke of Red 6, smoking the red, white and blue is Flight Lieutenant James Turner. JT has previously flown the Typhoon operationally and is also a qualified flying instructor on the Hawk T Mark 1. Cosford, give the synchro pair a round of applause. So look to your front right 45 and you'll see the Enid formation with an inverted V. Red 6 and 7 lining up on Enid for the colourful double goose. Each of the aircraft are fitting with the smoke pod, which is capable of producing 5 minutes of white smoke, 1 minute of blue smoke and 1 minute of red smoke. Red smoke comes on and the synchro pair split for the synchro heart. For those who'd like to display the red heart beam today, and especially from Red 3 to Christine and Graham, his parents. And I would like to dedicate this heart today to my own family, my wife Adele, my daughter Cara and my son Harrison. Ladies and gentlemen, once again give the synchro pair a round of applause for a beautiful heart. Red 6 and 7 again split with red 7 on the left and red right. Red 6 on the right again diving down to 100 feet and that's 700 miles per hour closure. Performing a manoeuvre which was named by one of the viewers of the One Show in 2020. This is Crossbow. Directly to your front now, and once again you'll see the nose lights of Enid to form the infinity symbol in the infinity break. Cosford, it has been an absolute honour and a pleasure to display for you today. This is the 2022 Royal Air Force Aerobatic Team, the Red Arrows. Smoking white to gather the rest of the formation before they form up, and they will do a one last flyby of the airfield. Ready for that final fly past. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Red Arrows. It'll be nice to see some fixed ex-RAF Harrier GR3 just behind the line of training aircraft in the centre of the showground, and that fighter with a happy wings. They're not a bit missing. I was just going to say they were like a service which continued until very, very recently, and quite a lot of them found their way. The second contribution from the Belgian air component. We enjoyed the A109 helicopter a little bit earlier. This will be the F-16.
At minute 1
it will be the Dream Viper F-16.
We'll be able to get you across.
Certainly the aircraft that did a very good practice display for us on Friday. If the sun comes out as well, it will look amazing. It's quite a scheme. The top, if ever you've been on a big wheel and you do that over the top and everything rushes past your head, that is negative G. It's very uncomfortable both for the pilot and also the aircraft. Modern aerobatic aircraft, beautiful of its first flight. It was supposed to just be a fast taxi trial, part of the build-up, the introduction of a new air. Display pilot this year, Senior Captain Stephen de Vries. Look right from the Belgian air component, this is the F-16. On, and I hope you caught that amazing Dream Fighter colour scheme glinting in the sun.
moment. One of the first fly-by-wire jet aircraft. The stick, the throttle, the rudder, directly connected to the flight control surfaces on the aircraft. They go through a vast array of computers. The pilot basically tells the aircraft what to do, and the computers make it happen. There you see a big negative G push off the top there. Some -3 to 4G, extremely uncomfortable. All the way around, inverted. Thus reversing direction. Axis, I'm expecting a 4-point hesitation roll. 90, 180, 270.
Cosford to ground, as a rough start is approved, runway 24 30, 1013, outside
So now the F-16 making the most of the relatively high cloud base we have at the moment, coming back down with a couple of spiral turns. And now you can hear the power has come off. We saw the Rafale perform an amazing low-speed pass. Well, this is the F-16 low-speed pass. Again, watch for what we call high alpha. The nose pointing relatively high. The aircraft slowing down to 140 or so knots. Listen to the bird.
component, Senior Captain Stefan de Vries in F-16 Dream Viper. Complete the display by the F-16. We are so I think we've got some Junos in the vicinity, or at least a Juno in the vicinity. So that just gives us a couple of minutes to talk about the next display item. So having commentated for 25 or so odd years, I have a huge online collection of commentary notes in the years gone by, and I do have a kind of bin folder into which I drop all those commentary notes that I just can't get rid of, but I know I'll never. One of the most incredible things about the Lynx, and it dates back to very early in the programme. The first prototype flew in March 1971. The following year, a development Lynx broke some helicopter world speed records, but it was most famous for the August 1986 outright helicopter world speed record set by a Lynx ride. It was a former company demonstrator. They've given it the so-called British experimental rotor program rotor blades, a very distinctive design that later became very familiar on the modern Lynx variants. This was a Westland design. It was conceived as a successor to the Scout and the Wasp. But it became part of that Anglo-French collaboration, and they built two main variants. There was the naval variant, which was first into production for operational service for the Royal Navy and the French Navy with a wheeled undercarriage, and then the battlefield version, which ended up being virtually solely for the British Army Air Corps on ships, and that's the one we're going to see. And of course we also have a link here to our 40th of the Falkland Islands campaign. We do. With the Lynx very much being introduced in service. There was still some waffles around on the battle's first vessel. Yeah. But certainly the Lynx was beginning to take over. Sadly a Lynx was lost. All the Lynx aircraft that were lost in the Falklands were actually on time with the Sea Skewer anti-shipping missile, and they mounted patrols with the Royal Navy Sea Kings to help protect the task force. But the Army Air Corps Lynx certainly would earn their spurs in many, many other conflict theatres. But this particular airframe dates from 1980. It was built as a Lynx AH-1. Also infrared shrouds for the engine exhaust, amongst other changes. The Army Lynx could carry up to 12 troops, some 2,000 pounds of internal cargo, 3,000 pounds underslung. Its main armament was the TOW, which stood for tube-launched, optically tracked, wire-guided anti-tank missile, as well as door-mounted guns. And had a Warsaw-packed armoured advance come across the North German plain during the Cold War, Lynx like this would have operated in conjunction with Army Air Corps Gazelles, acting in the observation role as anti-tank platforms. And as we were successful in Operation Desert Storm in the Gulf in 1991, almost forgotten now, I would say, the part they played there. The Navy used them to tremendous effect in that conflict as well. But on a single day, during that first Gulf War, a Lynx AH-1 of the Army Air Corps 654 Squadron destroyed 2 Iraqi armoured personnel carriers and 4 T-55 tanks in what was the first ever operational employment of the TOW missile. And Royal Navy Lynx Mark IIIs scored many hits with their Sea Skewer missiles against Iraqi Navy vessels. It really was testament to this aircraft's performance, and I would say deserves to be far better known. Navy Lynx was deployed
deployed globally aboard ships, including on HMS Endurance, the Antarctic Ice Patrol vessel. Army links like this, likewise, they were stalwarts of operations in Northern Ireland, of the various interventions we made in the Balkans, right through to Kosovo in 1999 and peacekeeping efforts thereafter, of the Iraq War of 2003 and from 2006 onwards in Afghanistan.
And of course, in addition to its primary attack role, like all helicopters, they get used for everything. Jack of all trades, utility, battlefield support, casualty evacuation, go anywhere, do it.
What made the Army links like this so aerobatically capable when they were in military service was the rigid titanium rotor head. Rather like the Balco Bull 105 that we've seen
at Cosford.
I've seen at Cosford with the Flying Bulls in 2018. Yes, able to confer superb aerobatic performance. This was one of the last 6 Mark 7 links in Army service, with more capable and later on more powerful super links, maritime variants, attracting customers such as Germany and South Korea. Following on from earlier links deals with the likes of Brazil, the Netherlands and Norway. The only export customer for the battlefield links like this with the skid landing gear was Qatar, who took 3 for their police force, which have long been retired. But the service of the links with the Army Air Corps very ably remembered by historic helicopters. And so completing its sequence, the Westland Lynx AH-7. Fixed-wing side concerns the replacement of the venerable short Tucano M1. Last saw here in 2019 its final display season. Well, that aircraft has been superseded by a development of one of the aircraft that fought against the Tucano for the RAF requirement the Tucano met back in the RAF Cosford Airshow, courtesy of number 617 Squadron at RAF Marham, the Lockheed Martin F-35B Lightning. To see the F-35B coming in for a low approach into the hover, showing us the capability of that extraordinary Rolls-Royce lift fan component of the propulsion unit. Substantial Royal Navy element amongst the British F-35 crew complement. One of 3 F-35 derivatives, the others being the conventional takeoff and landing F-35A and the F-35C, the carrier variant. Then once again, from the left to transition into the hover, the number 617 Squadron Lightning. Airshow with the future. So indeed that does bring to an end the flying programme we had for you today. How great it is to be back at Cosford. Just before we sign off, I would just like to say a big thank you to everyone who's been involved in putting this show on. There are thousands of people that will be working late into the night and into the next few days to get the airfield operational again for its normal day-to-day work. It is a mammoth effort. Take it from me, we're all delighted to put the show back on. Long, long may it continue. So I'd like to thank Henry.